Hi, and welcome to another edition of Come and Discuss Spurs. With me this time, the regulars, Stuart and Adesh. Hi, guys.
Hello.
How are we feeling this week, Stuart? How are you feeling about all things Tottenham?
Pretty chilled because I'm not watching the internationals. So as I'm not watching the internationals, I'm just going, I can sleep and breathe, and there's very little stress as long as no one gets injured, is the thing.
Indeed. Adesh, how about you?
Adesh, you're on mute.
Sorry, pretty much the same. But hoping Kane gets an international goal. It's been a while. I think that would be nice for him. But otherwise, pretty chilled.
Yeah,
Happy.
so we were thinking about having a chat tomorrow, and then I panicked and realised that was an England game. I guess people are still interested in international football sometimes for some reason. Can't think why.
Happens.
But yeah, so I guess we'll since we're a Spurs chat, we'll get on with all things Spurs. So I've got a couple of pretty provocative questions for you today. So hopefully that will hook our individual single listener who actually goes on YouTube, because we have like a single digit viewing audience. Apparently, I think it's just us rewatching bits that we've just discussed. So, anyway, it's a dedicated audience, all the same if it's us. But yeah, so I'm. There's a couple of, there's one very interesting landmark going. I mean, apart from the way that the position we're in the league and the state of things, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you guys this week is because it's, okay, so we're not top, but we're in pretty good shape. It's always nice to think and talk about Spurs when things are going well. And what I tend to do is run for cover when things aren't going so well. I think the last suggestion of a chat was by you, Stu, and it was off the back of quite a bad result. Yeah. And you got a stony silence that time.
Have we got two people in? We got two.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, we had Adesh and Puneet who joined us. So we had like a quick little chat.
Go ahead with it.
Yeah, yeah.
I missed that one. Is that available for the viewing public?
It is not, because the recording failed, unfortunately.
Okay, that must be why I missed it.
Get ourselves properly organised next time for these short. It's the short notice ones. That's the problem. I'm pretty sure when we win, there'll be like loads of people on. But the short notice one didn't really work out too well with the loss, but never mind.
Yeah, but
and the whole atmosphere of throwing away the 3-goal lead in the last 10 minutes. Everybody was not too happy.
Well, I certainly didn't feel like talking about it. I probably could now, but it seems like ancient history at this point. So this is a feel-good podcast. So I want to take the opportunity to point out that it's been a year since Pochettino was sacked, and roughly a year since Jose Mourinho was, otherwise known as various different nicknames, was brought on board. So my provocative question number one for you, Stuart, is it a good thing that Daniel Levy sacked Pochettino?
Personally, I'm going to go with no. I mean, I think Pochettino produced some of the best football I've ever seen as a Spurs fan. He definitely produced the most exciting nights of football that I've ever had as a Spurs fan. But when you look at it in the cold light of day, you take like all that personal emotion out of it. You look at it in the cold light of day, and you got to say it seemed as though it was coming to an end, and maybe it was the right time for him to go. But of course, he's been out of a job for a year now, and there's a lot of talk about him maybe going to Manchester United today, which has come out. And of course, Real Madrid he's been linked to as well recently. Both clubs, I'm pretty sure he'd probably jump at managing. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what he does at the next club, because I don't think he'll get the time to do what he did at Spurs. Because at Spurs, he was given the time to build that base, get rid of the players he didn't want, bring in players he did, and take chances. He took chances on players that we were like, not sure about that. I know a lot of people saying Harry Kane shouldn't be leading the line at the time. So what could you do about that? Is he going to have that time? Is he going to have that opportunity at a club like Real Madrid, where you have to win? You have to win every game.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. And so I'd like to follow up on that in a moment about where his future lies. But so it's an interesting question about was it the right time? Because I think none of us are in any doubt about his qualities, right? And we all love him. I think we all will. We always will, no matter what he does in the future. But the question is the timing. Was it right? Was it working? Was it going anywhere? What do you think, Adesh?
I think we were stagnant. We were standing still, maybe going behind and backwards a bit. I don't know if it was all down to him. I share the sentiment, like best time of our lives with Poch. Maybe he should have been given a little bit of time to see if he could turn it around. But we had a torrid last 12 to 18 months with him. And I'm kind of, at the time I was quite upset, but I think now you look back, like Stuart said, in the cold light of day, and you take emotions out of it. It's been better for us. It's been good for us. Maybe everybody needed a change. We're all looking for that legacy manager, like the Ferguson that would be here 25 years or whatever it is. But I don't know. It's still to be seen, I think.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
We still don't know, right? So obviously a lot depends on how well Mourinho does, and we'll come to that. But right, so on the question of, again, obviously the sacking all depends on who you get instead. So it's very difficult to separate those two things. But was it time's up for Pochettino? I think one of the things that puzzle me about that whole period is, and a lot of people have said this has been discussed ad nauseum, but the question of signings. So what happened with the squad? And I mean, the stagnation was partly to do with the squad stagnation. Now, I would, obviously there was the whole stadium discussion and, whether we can actually afford to make signings. But we were starting to make signings towards the end, but there's been a lot of discussion about the kind of manager that Pochettino is. Now, it's not clear to me whether what went down was a reflection of how Levy saw him or what Pochettino wanted to do himself. But he seemed to want to work with a group of young players. He didn't seem to like the idea of signing too many players. He seemed to be quite particular about the players at the club, and he seemed to want to keep the squad very much his squad, right? His team, his players. And he seems quite resistant to bringing in people that might upset the apple cart. So I do wonder, I think there's maybe a question for him about how good he is at taking a squad for a certain period of time and then understanding that it's time to refresh it himself. We'll never know, but I wonder how responsible he was for our squad stagnation. What do you guys think?
I wonder if he just became like us fans, very attached to his players. And I think sometimes it's a type, yeah. But there's a point where you can't be. You have to still be cold and to a point, make the hard decisions. And maybe he felt that difficult. So I don't know if the signings were there for him. I think in the current climate, I'm surprised that he hasn't been snapped up because of what he can do with existing players and how he can develop people to be better quickly and to better themselves in the squad. You would think that would be something that's really in demand with the financial climate as it is at the clubs. So I think that surprises me.
But it also sort of fits in with this picture of, what kind of manager is he? Is he the kind of manager that can take a club that doesn't spend big and harness not underperforming players, but not stars, right? And get them to gel well, players who buy into his mindset, his game plan, and who can make a sum that's greater than a whole that's greater than the sum of its parts. But if he's that kind of manager, then has his sort of reputation has outgrown his style a little bit, because otherwise he's going to have to join one of those big clubs, take on those stars?
Mm.
Do people, so I mean, maybe he's better off, managing an Aston Villa or an Everton or something rather than, Man U, Real Madrid or whatever. What do you think?
I think he's a developing coach. I think he's a developing coach, and we speak to him as if he's the finished article. He'll probably look back and think, this is something that I didn't do correctly. And at the next club, this is what I've got to change. And he seems like a very progressive guy, and most progressive people look back on their experiences and learn from it. And I think that would be the same with him. We can't just say he's this coach because he's still in his phase of development. He's a relatively new coach. So
that's fair.
We might see at the next club that he can make that step. Don't know.
But yeah. So Stu, what do you think about Pochettino's reputation? It's difficult for us to tell as Spurs fans how he's perceived. Or how do you think he's perceived elsewhere? Is he perceived as this sort of star manager, or is he perceived as someone who's a job for a different kind of role?
I think there's probably a difference between the way that we perceive him as fans and what we've seen, from Mauricio Pochettino and the way that others look at him. If you look back at his history, he's been at Espanyol, where he didn't manage any big name players, or if they were there at the end of their careers, or they were starting out and then they got sold on. I mean, part of the problem was they sold everybody who was good at Espanyol. Then he went to Southampton. And we know what Southampton are like. Southampton are like Liverpool's feeder club. You score against Liverpool, you sign for Liverpool. That's literally the rule. Every single player that scored against Liverpool for Southampton was signed by them within 3 years, and that went on for quite some time. So, again, it's about developing players for him, I think. It's not about buying the finished article. And I think that was probably part of the disconnect. We're a Champions League club now, or we should be. We are normally a Champions League club. Not this season, but hopefully next. We have traditionally been a Champions League club for the last few years. And we're looking at Champions League level players. And I think it's interesting that the one player that's been brought in that was kind of a leftover from the Pochettino era was Bergwijn, because Bergwijn was fully scouted and everything was ready for him to come in before Pochettino left. And he was like, okay, we've got this guy ready to come in, and he was brought in as like just the one thing that was left over from the Pochettino era. And he's not the finished article. He's very raw. He's got loads of power. He's got loads of pace. He's an excellent player, or was up until this year, where he seems a bit out of shape. But I think that's the kind of player he likes. I don't think he's into buying, the fully formed article. And maybe that's probably why Real Madrid might be better for him, because Real Madrid have bought a lot of young players over the last few years, and they've changed their modus operandi a little bit. They've definitely been looking at, bringing players through and buying the very best of the players from their domestic leagues than they have been of buying the finished article.
But the Real Madrid's hallmark isn't patience. So, I mean, it's like time for them to try and do this. But, I mean, if I was in Pochettino's position, I'd be, you could say that it's ideal for him, right? Because it's both stature and a development role in the long-term plan. But are they gonna stick with that? I mean, to a certain extent, I think that maybe Pochettino is a victim of his own modesty a little bit, because I think he probably would command the respect to manage those big stars, but I just don't think he wants to sign them, right? I don't think it's the job he would take on. But if he's handed that kind of squad, I'm sure he'd do a great job with it. But maybe he just needs to, one of these clubs like Real Madrid or something, he would just be handed players and he would just be told to make it work, and he probably would.
If Poch goes back to Real Madrid, we could probably see Reguilon moving back, because he's that type of player for him. Bags of potential, a fullback that he likes to bomb forward, young.
I don't. Well, I think Reguilon is happy, but yeah, I mean, especially as well. I don't. When you get a player in their first year, it's not something I lose any sleep over. He'll be at Spurs for a long time if he's as good as he seems to be so far. But yeah, I take your point with that kind of player, right? Yeah, but
well, they've got two defenders there who play in this position who are settled for now. But obviously, Marcelo's going to be going at some point. He's not getting any younger. And Mendy is not particularly brilliant. So, you know, there's definitely going to be a space. As long as Zidane is there, there's no chance he won't go back. Because, you know, the talk is that he had a big falling out with Zidane's son, which is why he ended up leaving the club. So,
Reguilon.
Yeah, Reguilon and Lucas Zidane apparently had a big falling out.
Zidane does fall out with people, doesn't he? Crikey.
Zidane's a fiery individual, as we've seen from headbutts and sending off.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the hard man to please, apparently.
Very much so.
Yeah, but so, okay. So, I mean, I think that we're all more or less on the same page. I mean, we all wish Pochettino well. It will be interesting to see what happens, where his future lies. I do have some concerns about the way things went for us, and then, you know, therefore the kind of manager will be in the future, and or the kind of people that will take a gamble. And it's peculiar that it's been so long. It's hard for us to know what to make of that. But yeah, I'm sure it won't be much longer. Someone will take the gamble. I'm sure he'll do a great job. But yeah, so I think that my personal opinion is that it probably was the right time, although it was heartbreaking at the time. I think it probably was the right move. But then the big question, perhaps, or the next big question, Jose Mourinho, 1 year on, 1 year in, the maddest year of football I've ever seen. I think we can all agree on that. What craziness has this been? I've got it's a two-part question actually, this one, which I'll hit you guys with both. I'll start with Adesh this time. Has Jose Mourinho done a good job? Was he a good signing? Would we be in the same position with him right now if there had been fans in the stadium for every single one of his games?
Let's start with, I didn't want him. I didn't think he'd fit Spurs. But looking back, I think he's done a good job. I think we've seen progress again. Maybe not in the way we want to play. We've seen glimpses of it, but it's not there yet. I think he's done a good job so far. He's given us something different. It's very hard-nosed, very edgy. And he seems to be getting the best out of our key players, besides Dele, obviously, but Ndombele, Lo Celso, Kane, and Son are looking like wonderful world-class players that we wanted them to be. And so I think he's done a good job. I think the jury is still out because, you know, it's always the thing with him as he reaches the ceiling and then everything else goes to crap afterwards. And that's always lying in your back of your mind. When is that going to happen? But I think we have a squad that is hungry for that now. They want to see that ruthlessness come into the club and to move us to a different level. Maybe the feeling of we've been nice for too long is the players might have been feeling that as well. And he might have been the catalyst for that. So far, I think he's done a good job. Not my favorite to start with, but I have to give him his dues and say that we're moving in the right direction. I'm seeing a lot of tinkering, but I think that's to be expected. It's happening over a long period, but that could also do with the number of breaks that we've had with the pandemic and stuff. But I can see that, you know, we were pretty lost to start out with. Then we were super attacking and leaving ourselves open, and now we've seemed to go back to say, let's build from the back, and we'll probably win most of our matches on individual talent. What I'd like to see now is that once we set that base, that we become more progressive going forward. So I think that, did I answer everything? I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, I've got a particular spin on the lockdown thing, but I can come to that at some point myself if you like. But no, I mean, I take your point. I think maybe we've started to see glimpses of that progressive side with some mad games this season. Right? I think things looked very bad after the Everton game. Like we were all like, oh God, everything that the worst of what we'd seen last season, we're seeing it again. Um, and we've seen some pretty cagey performances recently, but it's sort of in a context like we've seen the sweet stuff, we've seen the fun. Maybe we can deal with a bit of hard-nosed stuff now that we've seen that we're capable of playing some football. What do you think, Stuart?
I think everybody who's been on CADS knows I am not a fan of the translator. I've never been a fan of the translator, and I probably never will be a fan of the translator. I think when Pochettino left, I mean, I remember typing out a message that night saying, there's no way Levy's going to go for someone like Mourinho, because he is the very antithesis of what we've been doing at Spurs over the last few years. He's not progressive. He doesn't work particularly well with youngsters, and he just annoys people. And then he came in, and if I'd had a beer, I probably would have cried into it at the time. Honestly, it was a hard evening when he was confirmed as manager. I was like, no, why? Has he done a good job? It's difficult. The football last season was terrible at times. Football last season was really, really difficult to watch. I mean, I watched all of the Amazon documentary, and I was like, yeah, I don't remember it feeling that positive at almost any point last season. You know, there were games we won, but there were also games that we played very, very badly, and with just one or two moments of brilliance. And on the Amazon documentary, we saw those moments of brilliance. And I've said it so many times. The translator sets a team up to not concede and then relies on a moment or two of brilliance to win us the game. And that's what we saw last season. This year, I think we're seeing something different. I'm not sure whether he's been forced into it by players like Reguilon coming available. He didn't expect that. Nobody expected that. Bale coming available again. That was not exactly to be expected by anyone. So he's been put into a position where people aren't going to accept him not playing these players. And if he's going to play those guys, he has to be more attacking. He has to be more progressive, as you said. So maybe he's being forced into an area he doesn't particularly want to work, but it's working out for him.
Yeah, but I think, I mean, I see your perspective there, Stu, but I mean, you know, I would say that some of those statements are coloured by your low expectations, right? So everything he's done that's good, in a manner of speaking, has been imposed on him in that view. Whereas
I think he's made the most of what's been handed to him. I'm not saying, you know, he's obviously a good manager, good coach, whatever title we want to give him. He's got the track record, he's got the history to show it. You know, just because I don't like the guy doesn't mean I can't look at it and say I can't recognize what he's done in the past. He's achieved some very good stuff. And his Porto side were actually really quite entertaining at times. Chelsea less so. Inter Milan were horrible to watch. I don't know if you saw any of his Inter Milan team, but
yeah, but I think the early Chelsea stuff was quite exciting at times. I mean, I don't think, you know, I mean, he accused us of parking the bus, right? We were, you know, under Santini. They were attacking people. I mean, okay, so they were doing it mostly on the break, but they were doing it a lot on the break. Right? So they were a very aggressive side at the early Chelsea team.
Yeah, but they worked to a formula. They were very much a formula-based side on that, and it wasn't. Again, it wasn't about having the genius on the pitch and some beautiful play, which we have seen this season. We've seen some fantastic football, but I think this season, some of the stuff we've seen this season is very much the aberration compared to what we've seen in the past. I think COVID has probably worked out very nicely for him.
Right.
Because I think COVID and having an empty stadium has given him the chance to try stuff out and play football in a way that he's got his feet under the table, and there's been no fans in the stands who have been able to give him hell. And frankly, some of the games after the lockdown last year, if there was Spurs fans in the stadium, they would not have been quiet about it. They would have given him absolute pelters. So,
yeah, I totally agree. I think that he's led a charmed life in that respect. I mean, I don't think even he would say that. No one could say that, you know, that it's been a good thing that we've had a pandemic, but just in isolation, the question of how it's gone for him as a manager, I absolutely think that he would where he would be fighting a fan revolt based on some of the games. We were seeing that a little bit before the lockdown, and he was just about getting away with it because it was still early enough. But he would have, I mean, there probably would have been a booze around the stadium against Everton, I would say, at the least, and possibly took a few games towards the end of last season too. You know, with that baggage that he's got, you know, playing some of the football that we were playing, you know, he wouldn't have had the breathing space to just get on with it. And you know, but let's not forget. I mean, there was some bad blood around the stadium, right? Because the last game was Dyer was wading into the crowd, right? And then no more fans. Couldn't have happened at a better time for Dyer, probably as well. To be fair, there was real tension between the players and the manager of that circle and the fans at that time. And then it all just stopped. So it's difficult to say how things would be now, but I think things would be on a different footing now. You know, I think many fans will have seen enough to, you know, some good times and some fun. They'd be okay with it. Also, I think that there's another aspect that one of the things that I'm picking up from watching lockdown football is some of the players are going to sleep. Some of the matches are going to sleep a little bit. And I think that what the players are really missing from the absence of fans is just that constant drive, play, fight, don't give up, you know, don't go to sleep, don't have a 3-0 lead and then just be casual and then just let it all slip away. That's an example of where it didn't work out for us. But I think for the most part, and particularly since that game, Mourinho has been doing a pretty good job of scaling the players into playing well, or at least not concentrating. He's quite an intimidating character on the bench. I'm not sure if all the players, if all the clubs have such an intimidating presence that keeps them on their toes. So I think he keeps the players on their toes. I think they must be a little bit terrified of him, must be a bit scared of him. And so under lockdown, maybe he's a good manager to have because he keeps everyone focused. But yeah, no, I think for the most part, I think it's the real difference has been not having fans there and him having time. I agree.
But also, Matt, our football was pretty poor before he got there. Last few months of Pochettino era was also very difficult to watch.
You couldn't expect him to turn that around quickly, right?
Yeah, so it's a bit of a legacy thing. I would like to think that he's also looked back on what's gone wrong previously and looked at his formulas and made a few changes, you know. Whereas you might have had two completely defensive midfielders. Now you've got one and you've got 2 8s and one's a bit of a maverick, you know. You look at Dele, there's something special about the way he moves with the ball, and you can't coach that. You can't coach that out of him either. So, you know, maybe he's tweaked it a bit. I'm with Stuart on this a bit. There's a formula, and I think the formula that he had at Chelsea, he has it at Spurs. He has his Drogba and Kane. He has his 2 flying wingers, and the only difference is he's got Dembele and Lo Celso who can do things that maybe other players don't see, and maybe that's the little change. And when it doesn't happen, we end up looking like we've ground out a result. Yeah. But I also don't think that we should count out how many games we've played. That Thursday, Sunday story, every time it happens, we, not just us, most teams, they're a bit, you know, below par on the next game. I think that's true of it. It's a factor to consider.
We played 4 games in 10 days or something, didn't we? We finished with Manchester United and thrashed them. I mean, and that was probably our best game at the time. So, you know.
But I almost wondered if that played into worked in our favour a little bit, because our players were up to full fitness because they had to be. They had a really busy fixture schedule to build up to, and coming through it, they were clearly at very high levels of fitness compared to a lot of clubs.
They were probably told they probably didn't do any training in between matches, or if anything, it was just walking through set pieces or shape or something like that. Literally going out on the training ground and walking, no running. Don't do anything that could tweak a muscle, you know. But yeah,
I think
we
the
played
United
some good
game was
football
an
in there.
exception. Yeah, I think the United game was an exception.
Chelsea as well, though. We were impressive against Chelsea.
Southampton,
Very well
not for the
organised.
first half. The first half we struggled against Chelsea. We came out maybe after a bit of a hairdryer in the second half. Southampton, we could have been 2 or 3 goals behind before we actually kicked on. If I'm trying to remember, but it could have been different. But take it as it is. The next 2 games are going to be the ones that really tell us how far we've come, because we're not going to have those teams that we're going to have real clever, dynamic attackers against us. And I'd like to see how we handle that.
But our 2 best games have been against teams that attack us. What we've really had a harder time, and I think this is classic Mourinho. He doesn't really. Well, games against a moderately defensive team become like a war of attrition. Whereas teams that come at him, maybe his formula works, or at least, we certainly. I mean, okay, maybe it's not him. Maybe we shouldn't give him credit. Kane and Son are capable of tearing teams apart who attack us, who come at us, right? And with those 2. I don't want to say on song because it makes me sound like a tabloid journalist. with those 2 firing, that's also a cliche. Then when working well together, then I think we as long as they're both playing, and with Bale coming in, I think that whether again maybe it's not Mourinho, maybe it's the players that he's got. I mean, and this is another interesting question, right? And it comes back to Poch. He's got these players. He's got these ready-made players. Or some players that are maturing to be ready now. He's got the likes of Bale, that obviously hasn't made much of an impact. I think his presence is still felt. It still feels like a different kind of club with him around. A bunch of other players, Højbjerg coming in, people being exactly the kind of player that we needed. Some talk on CADS about whether, what it means that, Mourinho comes in and he gets the players that he wants pretty much right away. Well, okay, whatever it is, whatever Mourinho does, if he inspires confidence in Levy, great. Whether it's something he deserves credit for, or just the fact that he's around, Levy puts his hand in his pocket.
He didn't have to put his hand in his pocket very deep for Højbjerg, though, did he?
No, he didn't.
If you look at,
not for a few.
I saw that, Fred, and they were comparing him to Schneiderlin and Moutinho. Now, Moutinho, they were asking 30 million plus. Schneiderlin was 27, and Højbjerg was 15. And we basically made most of that money back on selling Kyle Walker-Peters. So, I think it's a very different thing. It's, if somebody came around and said, right, we can sell them 1 player and we'll get Schneiderlin for 2 million or 3 million, pretty sure Levy would have done that.
I'm not sure what Levy's been smoking or what he's been doing, but that was a ridiculous transfer window, because the players that he signed, for way below what you would think they would be worth. I mean, okay, maybe it's this is maybe the advantage of being smart with the money, that there's an opportunity now. There's some players that are available and cheap, but then we're shipping out players for reasonable money as well. I mean, I think it's amazing the work that Levy's done. If there are people out there that think that any other chairman could have done any better at this exact moment, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't know what to say to them, because it's just ridiculous.
He's an economist. He's an economist, isn't he? He's buying low and selling high. You can guarantee all of those players, apart from maybe Bale, could be sold for more money than they've been brought in for. But Bale's got enough cachet value to make it absolutely worthwhile. But he's done amazing deals.
Nice Vinicius, loan player that we really need, with an option to buy. 2.5 million
or something.
Yeah, well, it's a loan, isn't it? So,
but he's cost us 2.5 million loan fee, and then if he proves himself, then there's a chunk of money at the end. But if he's proven himself, it'll be worth it.
Yeah, sure. So, well, we have an option, presumably. I'm not sure what that option is, but
I can't remember what it is. It's not cheap, I think, but
no. But then he looks like a quality player when he gets off the mark. The sooner the better. But Reguilon, Rondon, who we haven't seen yet, but he's supposed to be a good player. We've seen that other clubs is good. So no, I think it's an impressive squad, and maybe it's important to have a squad that's deep for the crazy fixture schedule that we have. So I think it's a smart move. So As a very poor organizer, I'm completely losing track of time. We should probably actually talk about some football matches, I think. Well, okay. I did have one other talking point that I was going to ask about. Maybe I'll see if anyone really wants to jump on this, which is Dele Alli. It's been talked about a lot. Where do we think we are currently? Do we think that he's finished, or is this still part of Jose Mourinho's motivational game?
I think he's an immensely talented player who doesn't fit into this team. I think that's about the best we can say to him. He seems to be lacking a bit of confidence right now. He's a brilliant player. He's got all the skills in the world, but sometimes it just doesn't work. I mean, just today, the story come up on John Bostock on the BBC. You know, John Bostock as a youngster was an immensely talented player. It just didn't work out for him, and I think potentially that's what we're seeing with Dele. But again, if we sell him, we'll make more than the 5 million we spent on him.
But with Dele, it's not about potential, is it? Because he just has to play at the level that he has already played.
It's confidence.
I think so.
For him.
I personally don't buy into this narrative that he's the wrong kind of player for the system, because I think that he can. I mean, okay, he's not as fast as Son, but he was playing in that kind of role. So if anything, Son's stolen his role, if you like, of sort of ghosting in and feeding off Harry Kane a little bit. So maybe there's just not a role for him because they were just better players or better.
Yeah, I think it's available spaces.
Yeah,
but I think when I first saw him play, I thought this is a future Gerrard. We're going to see this guy dictating stuff from deep and running matches from the middle, and he's never done that. He's never.
But that's what we thought we were buying. That's what he was supposed to be, right? And then he turned out to be a nice little goal poacher.
Yeah.
I mean, he has all the skills, the close control and everything to play centrally. But what he demonstrated that I think surprised all of us is the sheer audacity on the ball to try really crazy things. And maybe he was just riding high on the wave of confidence at the time and felt like he could do anything and did. But, you know, if he actually just employed that skill in a slightly more boring but more regular way of just being tidy and controlling tight spaces, releasing other people, basically an Eriksen type of player,
he wouldn't be as good.
Well, but then again, I mean, I take your point. I think we'd all be quite sad to see that Dele Alli go. But on the other hand, Eriksen was great at what he did. And, you know, a new Eriksen, I'm not saying he's that kind of player, but I think he could have been. I think if he'd applied himself that way, he might have been, because he has the skills necessary. What do you think, Adesh?
I think the impact that he made, it's kind of worked a little bit against him, because we saw this part of his game that was already excellent, and he didn't give himself, and we didn't give him enough time to develop the parts of the game that he still needed to improve on as a young player coming through. And I still think he has the potential to be a really good midfielder if he's able to harness his athleticism, and he's got that fire, he's got that fight in a deeper role. But that means he's got to develop that part of the game that has been ignored for a long time. So I have hope for him. I think they're looking at him as an option in midfield, but he's not there yet. I would see two of him, Lo Celso, and a Ndombele to fill in those two spots in the midfield next to Højbjerg, and I think that's where he's going to develop.
But I think I think it's possible for him to be at the spearhead of that three, and that suits him pretty well. I mean, I always picture us playing something with basically Kane up front, maybe dropping deep to be replaced by someone else, two attacking wingers and a attacking midfielder behind them, and then that three, you know, depending on the formation, the essential attacker moves forward or moves back. The wingers get closer to the goal or drop back slightly or play in a line. So these kind of formations, you know, it depends on the player and everything. Maybe early on he was playing more as a wing forward, where now he might be better suited to playing centrally, but still in an attacking role. I don't think he's ever going to be the box-to-box midfielder that we thought we might see. He just doesn't see himself that way. It's just that ship sailed. I can't see it happening. But he could be that attacking midfielder again. but I personally, I mean, obviously a lot has happened in the transfer market. We brought these players in, and Dembele is clearly very good at that. Lo Celso can play that, or can also play that slightly deeper role. And obviously the likes of Son and Bale being in the squad too limit his options. But to me, and I think to many Spurs fans, if we're comparing him with the likes of Moura and Bergwijn, I think we'd rather see Dele. Obviously, maybe Dele can.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that Moura has fight, and right now I know he's not in good form. But I don't think, apart from that goal when he first on his debut, Bergwijn, I don't think he's ever really been exceptional. I don't think he's ever reached the levels that Dele has played at and can play at. So I would always prefer to see Dele, and I've been surprised that he hasn't been preferred. But so anyway, getting to the point, I think Mourinho is still playing the long game with him. I think we saw it with him on Dembele. I think there's a mind game going on. I think he's okay. I'm not sure if this is the correct phrase, but he's basically breaking him down to build him back up again. And he did that a bit with Ndombele, and I think, well, okay, Ndombele was injured as well. But I'm not sure if this is part of Mourinho's, grand plan. Maybe he doesn't plan this well. Maybe he's not that smart. But he's quite a smart guy. I don't believe that Mourinho has given up on him yet.
Me too. I'm there with you. I think if you look at Dele's trajectory, it's kind of mirrored Poch. You come in, you make a splash, we play the best we've ever been, and then we stagnated. And it's kind of similar, and now it's time to rebuild and find new ways. And maybe that's just where he is now. I really hope we get to see Dele in our shirt more often.
I think it's interesting that Dele's form seems to have dropped off a cliff about the same time that he stopped trying to nutmeg people in every single game. He went through a run of about 40 games where he nutmegged someone. I remember he nutmegged Modric at one point, and you're like, wow, that's not bad. The guy's brilliant. That tall. I nutmegged a 4-year-old, so it's like, it felt like that,
We laugh about it, but it probably speaks to the joy of playing without inhibition. And that's what it is. He's got to find a way to be joyous on his football again.
Yeah, I think he needs to get back to enjoying his football, and I'm not sure whether that's going to be under Mourinho.
His Instagram and stuff is being really positive. He's not taking this.
But that's all curated by people who are paid to do it. I think there are very few.
He's made plenty mistakes in the past.
He has. I think that's probably why it's now curated by people and looking very good.
There's certainly the will's there to keep his head down and not do anything that shows. I mean, very many players wouldn't have been able to handle this kind of, being out in the cold. But he's smart enough or sensible enough, what people around him are, I suppose, to know that he should keep his mouth shut. But yeah, I mean, fair play to him. He's not burning any bridges. Mourinho doesn't appear to have at least forced him to do that. He's not asking. I guess it's early days, but he's not asking for a move out. He could have been pushing for it during the last window, but I guess we'll see.
I was surprised he didn't go to PSG. Apparently, that option was available to him. There's space in that PSG team for him. PSG are a bit brash and a bit cocky, and they will dominate 90% of the games in this league in Liga. So
he'd enjoy that.
He'd love it, and he gets to play with Neymar, who's even worse than him. So I think he'd probably enjoy that. I think potentially he looked at it as maybe a step down to a lesser league, and maybe that was what stopped it for him.
I get the sense that he has a strong support system who felt that he needs to rein it in, and that he was losing his way, and maybe that's part to play. Buckle down and get back to what you could have been. I get that feeling. There was things out there about his folks wanting him to shed the image that he was putting and have better people around him and to make better decisions. And you don't know.
Do you think that equals not going to PSG then? So you're saying that it would have been?
Yeah, I think they would be afraid.
Down one path?
yeah, I think they would be afraid of him hooking up with those guys.
You've got to remember, this is a guy who's come from a very tough background.
Yeah.
You know, if basically deserted by his birth parents, left to fend for himself effectively, and then got adopted or fostered. It's why he doesn't want to be known as Ali anymore. He wants to be known as Dele, because Ali is his family name, and he says, I've got nothing to do with them. Frankly, to be where he is now, he's done absolutely amazingly, because a lot of people buckle under what he's been through in his life. So, I think you're right. I think probably there is a large proportion of that is the support system he's got, and I wouldn't be surprised if Eric Dyer is part of that support system, because those two
but he's
seem
got
very
that
close.
guy who he calls his brother, right? Who's very very close with his manager, I think, as well, isn't he, or something like that. So he's got a really good entourage, right, of people around him but he seems like a genuinely nice guy, and he seems to the extent that we ever know these people, seems quite level-headed, or maybe let's say away from the pitch, and even often on the pitch as well, I would say. But fair play to him. He seems to be willing to stick around, or maybe he's just waiting professionally for an opportunity to leave. I don't know.
Don't know if he's a nice guy on the pitch. I don't know if he's a nice guy on the pitch. I think he's probably one of those players that Mourinho loves, because he fits that C type thing on the pitch. He seems like a really nice guy off it, but he can be a little bit of a bastard on the pitch, much as Eric Lamela and Lo Celso can. They can be a bit naughty.
Yeah, I think that Dele Alli's wind-upable more than crafty, right? He's not been so smart about it, I think, like the likes of Lo Celso. Lo Celso's constantly at it, right? He's brilliant. I love it.
Oh, I think Lo Celso is much better at hiding it, but I just think Dele has an edge to him that many players don't.
Well, actually, no, it's interesting you make that point, because this is one of the things I think he's missing. I think he needs to bring that back. I don't know. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's not feeling it. Maybe he's lost his love of the game a little bit, and he just needs to be feeling that passion a bit more. And again, maybe that's part of what Mourinho is trying to work on, trying to wind him up a little bit, maybe to try and sort of set him off. But yeah, so okay, we could probably talk about Dele Alli all day, but we should probably stop. So I think that we bringing my phone so I can remind myself of the games. So since maybe we should whiz through some of the results briefly. Clearly, the least said about West Ham, the better. Again, it's already been covered. But since that game, we've been
let's not skip over West Ham. We played some amazing football against West Ham. We put ourselves in a position to absolutely dominate them, and we threw it away in 8 minutes. If Bale had scored that goal, where we skipped past everybody and just it's so close, then it would have been lights out for them.
Did you not talk about it already last time?
We did, but nobody heard us.
We did.
So.
Oh, okay. Do people going to hear us this time? No one's going to watch.
Send me this video. We'll get it out there.
Sure. Okay. No, it was a very memorable game, partly for great reasons and partly for not. Right. No, but right. I was sitting there watching that game with my kids, pulling their hair out, like, what's going on? And then my kids have been absolutely desperate to see this legendary player Bale, right? So the eldest just about remembers him last time, and that moment where he skipped past those players to get through on goal, that was it. That was the headlines written. I was seeing the headlines. I was reading them in that instant, and I couldn't believe it. That clearly he was pushed a little bit. So maybe it's not a criticism so much, but destiny. It was written in the stars, and then it wasn't.
Yeah,
it's football.
That's football.
Yeah, that was very disappointing. But yeah,
watershed moment for us, though. I think it was a watershed moment for us.
Thank you very much, Adesh. A beautiful segue to and our response to that game. Moving on was to say, I think there was a bit of soul searching after that. Say, why can't we defend the lead? Why can't we keep teams out? And this is something we've been expecting for a while. Okay, so we didn't do it against Brighton, but against Burnley, it was a tough, hard-fought win that I think we deserved, and I would say the same thing against West Brom. So, I mean, I guess we don't need to talk too much about Europa League games, which are a whole rule unto themselves in this context. But in these 3 games, we defended pretty well, right? Again, maybe we have a formula against teams that don't come at us too much, or they don't have fast attackers, which is key. And so our Dyer and Alderweireld look very good right now against attacks that don't come at us particularly fast.
Was a moment against West Brom where the guy had an absolutely free header that he glanced off his head. Those sort of things bother me.
Yeah.
And Royal Antwerp could have won by more goals than they did. That could have been a 2-0, 3-0 loss for us.
That wasn't good at all. Right.
Just wasn't clicking on that night. But we are still a little bit suspect at the back, I think. Certainly when Højbjerg's not playing.
Better teams get those chances, it's a different game. They bury it, and now it's 1-0, and then we different. So I think we've been a bit fortunate.
But our defensive record is one of the best of the season. So of the league, sorry. Our defensive record is very good. And I think that what's very difficult for us is we see the sort of the story of Tottenham's season, the story of Tottenham's year, but there's this backdrop of the virus, the lockdown, the lack of fans. A lot of teams are letting in a lot of goals, and maybe letting in a goal, or better still, keeping a clean sheet. Maybe letting in a goal is the new clean sheet, right? So this is more like par. There's goals in pretty much every game now. Very few goalless games at all. Very few teams that have clean sheets these days, it seems. I know. Do you have the stats there, Stu? Have you?
No, stopped all that. Not to hand.
But I believe that we're actually not doing too badly in that regard. Surprisingly, it's where unconvincing, but I think everyone is in defence a little bit right now. But yeah, so for the Burnley game, if I can cast my mind back, I wasn't particularly happy with that because I felt like we sort of got a bit lucky there. I thought that we got that by the skin of the teeth. I don't think we really deserved to score, or we had like 2 chances in the run up to that goal, and that was basically it for the game. So I found that game quite worrying, particularly off the back of the West Ham one. But the story's changed now. Maybe with those 3 games against Brighton and West Brom, maybe you can view that a different way. And I thought that the West Brom performance was pretty strong. It's like not exciting, but grinding out, getting results is a good habit.
I think the Burnley
game. What I notice is we come on strong in the last 15, 20 every game. Even if we're playing terrible, there's a step up in that. There's almost like there's a few shots on goal and it looks progressive, and then we get something.
And I think this is the point I was making earlier on about Mourinho keeping the team on their toes. That our boys seem to have some motivation from somewhere to close out games since West Ham. Admittedly, it's a big exception, right? But since West Ham, maybe they've been stung by the experience, or they're just they're focusing a bit better than some of the other teams late on.
I think the Burnley game reminded me of Aston Villa last season. We huffed, we puffed, but we managed to get a win. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't spectacular, but we got the points. But we've only had 3 clean sheets all season. People go on about how our defence is looking so good. Our defence ain't that great. Dyer's made mistakes. Alderweireld, who I've been very full of praise for in the past, he's made mistakes this year which we wouldn't normally see from him. And the West Brom, I think West Brom could have been a very different game if Sonny had taken that chance early on. If we'd got that, we'd have seen 2, 3, 4 goals going. But the longer it went on, the more they seemed to gain in confidence, and they had a few chances as well. And I kind of feel at the end we were a bit lucky to come away with a win on that one. But it's more about the fixtures that are coming up, and we got a tough run coming.
Yeah. So right. So taking stock, being in second place in a very tight league, it's it's a nice place to be. I think it's let's call it a platform maybe, and we'll see where we can take it. It's certainly, the possibilities are there. But right, so the run that we've got coming up. So we've got obviously the break, but in 10 days' time, we're playing City, then Chelsea, then Arsenal, and then Liverpool coming up, and Leicester soon afterwards as well. I mean, I would tend to. We were talking about managers that have a game plan. I would say that we've been playing some different. I think Mourinho's been mixing it up, but Guardiola is a man who only knows how to manage a team one way. So we pretty much know what that game's going to look like. It's just a question of whether City do a better job than they've done recently of showing that game, implementing that style. But if they come at us and they play high, I think we're going to create chances. What do you guys think?
Guardiola has a history of tinkering with his sides. Each time they go out for training for each game, they've got a little thing they're going to change here and there that's different. So we're not exactly sure of what we're going to see from them, but I think you're right. They're going to play, a fairly high game where they look to dominate possession and carve out some good chances.
All over the place.
Yeah. The
only thing I'd say is that they're susceptible to the break, which is what we set up for.
Yeah. We've done well against sides that come at us this year. Yeah. Southampton have come at us, Manchester United came at us, and we put both of those away with some aplomb. I'm quite looking forward to the game because I think it'd be an interesting game tactically between the two. I think we've actually got a really good chance because Man City will come at us, and that will actually kind of play into our hands.
Yeah, I mean, it will undoubtedly be hugely disappointing. We'll all be made to eat our words, but I think we're all feeling, because I mean, we have to see the game. I mean, that's what the season's been like. Teams that play this way, we have taken some of them apart. Now, I guess I'm dreaming if I think that we would do some of the same to Man City. They're a class above Man U and Southampton, but you'd think that I'd be fairly confident that we'll score, and then. So then it's just a question of whether we can be resolute against them, frustrate them a little bit. And then the team that I really don't know much about this season, because they're quite different and they're still somewhat in flux, is Chelsea. I'm not sure what to make of them. I don't know what kind of team we're really going to be facing. Obviously, we've played them already. We did very well. They were the better team for most of the game, I would say. I think you mentioned this earlier. But, who are they now? I mean, I don't really have a firm picture of Chelsea. What do you guys think?
And they've got a good defensive record in the last 5 or 6 games. Yeah.
But what's their style?
It's going to be a tough one.
What are they? Are they? I think they've been playing more defensively recently, right? They've been sitting back a little bit more, maybe not been playing quite so open.
They've got Kante back, which is difficult. He's such a one-man wrecking ball. And I think any team with him in there has more license to go forward. But I can't comment too much. I don't like watching Millwall with money. I try and pay no attention to them. So it's such a hard run. If I look at that list that we're getting, somehow Chelsea and Leicester worry me the most. I know we've got Man City and Liverpool and Arsenal in between, but somehow I've got the other ones, Leicester.
Well, so on to Arsenal. They say that the form book goes out of the window, but I really wish we were playing Arsenal now because they look real absolute dog shit. So, I mean,
Arteta's got a worse record in his first 26 games than their previous manager in his first 26 games, and everybody loves Arteta, and not doing that brilliantly. And there's obviously some dissension within the ranks there. They've, Ozil's not even been given a shirt number or something this year, not registered for the Premier League. He's costing them 350 grand a week, and there's a couple of players like that who's on decent money there and probably just looking to see out their time. Yeah, I think that squad's probably on the down. I think Chelsea are probably on the up. Chelsea worry me more because I don't really know, like you, I don't really know what to expect from them. They've brought in some players I don't know much about. And they've got Kai Havertz, who I love as a footballer, and I just wish he hadn't gone there.
Between Havertz, Ziyech, Abraham, Werner,
Yeah.
It's a lot of attacking talent. Pulisic, there's a lot of people who can hurt us, who can be clever, they can be physical, or they can, really hit us on the break. So they can hurt us in different ways. The difficulty is going to be in how we control the midfield, like every game, and that doesn't inspire me because we go through these periods where we seem to be dominated for a long time. It doesn't matter who we play against.
We just got another really difficult run coming up. I'm just looking at it now for December. 3rd of December, we've got Lask. 5th, we've got Arsenal. 10th, 5 days break, we've got Antwerp again. 2 days later, we've got Crystal Palace. 4 days after that, Liverpool. 3 days after that, Leicester. That's a horrendous run of fixtures.
I mean, I do think that we have to treat the Europa as a tournament apart with the different squads, and obviously, some of the players are going to get reused like they were this week. But hopefully, towards the end of the group, we'll already pretty much tied up. You guys still there?
Yep.
Yeah.
Everything's frozen for some reason. Okay. Well,
I'm still here.
Can you guys? No? Anyway, okay. As long as we can hear each other.
Let me move around.
Nope. Well, that's interesting because my computer is the one that's doing the video, so I may have spoken too soon about
as long as people can hear us, that's the important thing. I mean, nobody wants to look at this anyway, so.
Well, my computer. Oh no, actually, we're back to life. Excellent. Good. And recording's still happening, hopefully, so we should be good. But yeah, no, so as I was saying, hopefully we're going to have to rotate, but hopefully towards the last game or two of that group stage, we won't need the results as much, and we'll be able to rest players, and this is why it's really important. It's a shame that we dropped points against Antwerp, but we need to, the next game or two needs to be really strong so we can afford to rest players in this nasty schedule. But yeah, Liverpool then Leicester 3 days apart is an absolute nightmare. Yeah, I mean, because Leicester have been really good, and I think their league position, I've seen a little bit of Leicester more than I've seen of some of the other teams, and they look really good. They deserve to be where they are, I would say.
They've invested the Chilwell money cleverly.
Yeah, no, they're being really confident. Brendan Rodgers has got them really well organised, and they look like they're going to be a very tough team to play against. So between, obviously Leicester have had a lot of Liverpool have had a lot of injuries, but Liverpool and Leicester's looking very nasty. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of tough.
Guys, I'd love to chat for longer, but I've got to go. It's been lovely.
We should.
Yeah, seems like a good time.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. And there's too many games to do match predictions, so we'll just keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. All right. Thanks, guys.
Lovely seeing you guys. Bye.
Good talking to you. Cheers then. Bye.